Thank you for having us here. My name's Pat Durden, and I'm the current president of the Florida Cattlemen Association. I'm from Gaston County, Florida, in the Panhandle. And me and Dale were talking about this earlier, trying to get our story straight on this. But I think I'm sixth generation in agriculture in our county. So it goes back to the late 1800s is where we can start in Florida in Gaston County. So we have Durden Red Angus, which is a Red Angus seed stock operation that mainly me and my wife and my 86-year-old father are the ones that run that with very little outside help by anybody. We have a few neighbors and stuff that we obviously work with to help each other, but that's kind of my story in the industry, and then I'll let Dale tell his.
Good morning. Good to see everyone. Thank y'all for coming out. I'm Dale Carlton. I'm President Elect of the Florida Cattlemen Association. Been here my whole life and my family. I'm 8th generation Floridian. I'm 6th generation cattle rancher. A very big blessing that my kids and my sister kids, which is the 7th generation, are very involved. And the 8th generation's on the ground. We got some little ones running around, so we're excited about that. I was born and raised in Hardy County. Our cattle operation is pretty much a family affair between my parents, my sister and her kids, and her husband, and my family. I'm blessed with 3 boys, 2 that are involved, 1 that's finishing up high school. Our ranch is in 3 counties, our home county, which is Hardy County, and then we have property in DeSoto and Highlands as well. Very glad to be here this morning.
Thanks, Dale. So I think it's important to recognize one thing, that we're both I'm the president, he's president-elect, and our operations are very different in size and exactly what we do. So I think it's important to all the producers that might be listening or paying attention on this webinar and that kind of follow the association, they recognize that we as an association represent all segments and all shapes and sizes of cattle producers in the state of Florida. I think that's very important to me. So I'm going to give you a little bit of at least what we were asked to do is talk about the Florida Cattlemen's Association. And what is the Florida Cattlemen's Association? So our membership is made up of what I would consider our real stockholder members are anybody. It can be male or female, but basically our dues structure is the same all the way across the board, no matter what county you're in currently. So it is $150. And then we have our Cattlewomen's, which you can be a member of the Cattlewomen's. And they have a very unique mission, in my opinion, that's very important. And their main focus generally is engaging with the public and the youth and trying to tell our story in that manner, in that way. Not so much on the policy side of everything, but certainly trying to tell our story and engage with the general public through civic organizations and things like that. And then we have junior members, and the junior members are really special. I think, especially in agriculture, I think we try and put a real priority on juniors. I mean, I'm sure a lot of y'all here and that are watching have been members of 4-H or FFA, some kind of youth organization that revolves around agriculture. So we have our juniors, and they run, and their membership basically, probably a lot of them are dual members. They're probably members of a FFA or a 4-H, but their main focus in that is the cattle industry in Florida, and they get exposed to many different aspects of our industry here in Florida while they're a junior member. And obviously it's also to help develop them as leaders, and I think they do a good job of that. They have a show series throughout the year that the juniors put on and participate in. And then we have our allied members, and our allied members are basically the businesses and entities that support our ranching endeavor. So basically we buy products from them, we support them, and they support us through being allied members. And I think it's important to recognize for allied members and for the regular membership to understand that our allied group really does a tremendous job. When we hold meetings or the convention and do all those things, we could not do that without the Allied sponsorship and support. That is not where your dues go to those events. Your dues do not pay for any of those events. The dues go to pay for some of our staff and turn on the lights at the association office, but the Allied members, basically through their sponsorships and everything, they basically make sure that we can have our quarterly events and convention, and they make sure that we have the funds to do that. So since I talked about the dues and exactly what they're paying for, I just wanted to read off the list of our staff and what their titles were. First, we have Jim Hanley. He's the executive vice president. Jim is the range boss. Okay, I mean that's the way we view him. I think he's been in that position for 25 years. He's invaluable to our association. He brings so many things. He is all over, not just Florida, but all over the country working on behalf of our industry. And then we have Dusty Holly. He's a field service director. So Dusty's main focus generally a lot of times is here, solely right here in Florida, and trying to engage with our membership, working on policy. He does have a background where he used to work in Washington in a congressional office. So he does help facilitate some of our stuff in Washington, especially when we go there as officers, and he helps us guide us through the, I'm going to call it the rat maze of Washington, D.C., so we can be as effective as possible. Then we have Ms. Barbara Bird. She's the editor of our magazine. Judy Makinson is membership services. So if you're a state director or an officer or just a member and you need information, you're probably going to reach out to Ms. Judy. We have Angela McAllister. She's our comptroller. She makes sure that all our funds and money is accounted for and in the proper places that it needs to be. Then we have one of our newest people is Abby Clapp. She's communications and projects and event coordinator. So, as our association has grown and the things that we have our hands involved in, we've needed more staff to help make sure that we can get all these things done. And then we have a long time, and this is a contract employee, but I consider Sam Ard, our Director of Governmental Affairs, an employee just like all the rest. He's been with us for also he's working on 26 years, just like Jim, and invaluable to have him in Tallahassee looking out for us. Then we have Miss Benita Whalen, who is our Water and Environmental Manager. That's new in the last few years, and it's her ability to connect us with the water management districts and be able to try and merge what we do in ranching with what the water management does, and they're regulating water. Trying to merge and try and find some common ground where we can actually hopefully move forward in a positive way. We obviously know water is going to be important forever from here out. And then not on the FCA side, but very important, are Deanne Maples, Director of Education and Promotion for the Florida Beef Council. The Cattlemen's Association supports the beef checkoff, and we believe in it, and we think it builds beef demand, and we really believe in that in a big way. So we talked about all those things. I'll talk about the CATPAC, the Florida Cattle Political Action Committee. So that's how we actually, I said we build relationships with those funds. The purpose is to have the funds so we can have our professional staff like Jim Hanley and Sam Ard try and make sure that we have relationships. This is not in a party. We don't care what party somebody's in, whether they're Democrat, Republican, Green Party, it doesn't matter. If they are a friend of agriculture, if they're a friend of our industry, the cattle industry, then we want those people in Tallahassee. We want a seat at their table. When we call and have an issue, we want to be able to get in the door and know that they're really going to listen to our issue and hear our side of things. That's really what the Political Action Committee is doing. The fundraising for that, we have a PAC board, And the PAC board does not dictate where the funds go. They try and raise the funds. So they're just trying to raise the money so we can let our professional staff, try and make those right decisions and build those relationships for us. We do that with a bull credit sale. We generate most of the funds through a bull credit sale at our annual convention. I don't know how many years that's been going on. Dale's looking at me different, so he doesn't know either. But it's been going on for a good 20 years, I'd say. And basically, again, that money helps support building relationships with the lawmakers in Tallahassee so we can bend their ear when we need to. And I think Dale wants to tell you a little bit about the wins that we've had in those endeavors.
We had a very good year in Tallahassee during session. We had a lot of wins, really, but there's a couple that I want to talk about. Give you a little history on one of our wins. We have what we call the Florida Cattle Enhancement Board, and it came about in, I think it was 2014. Our president at the time of the association was Henry Kemper, and he made a push to get our beef checkoff for the raised $1 and for more of it to stay in the state, right? Yes. And I was on the executive committee, and we went through all the things that we had to go through. And then when we met with the governor, he looked at it and said, "This looks like a tax to me." It was Governor Scott, and he had promised no more taxes. So he called it a tax. He said, "We'll just give you the money." So he gave us $1 million. And so we created the Florida Cattle Enhancement Board was created, and it is a direct service organization of the University of Florida, and it is a 15-person board that is well represented by all aspects of our industry, and they're charged with seeing how we use the money. The money is restricted to research and promotion of the beef industry in Florida. The funding benefits the producers in Florida, whether you're a member of our association or whether you're not. Our association believes strongly that it is a great benefit to all producers in our state. Our association, that's one of our big things that we lobby for, is for that money. That money does not go into our association. That money is completely different, but the board handles that. But it is, like I've said, try not to repeat myself, it is restricted for research and promotion only, can't be used for anything else. And another big win, and this was going on this was the second session, but our tax exemption for cattle containment. First year we did it, we had to go back and be more specific and name the specific items that it just wasn't barbed wire and post. And that's kind of how it got presented. It was kind of limited, but we've got electric, help me here, electric fence.
Yeah, so
boards.
So the original language in the legislation, I guess two years ago now, which seems like basically it's a year ago because the session just ended. So it was a session before the one we just went through. And I call it the fence tax exemption. Basically, I mean, it's a cattle containment, but basically, the first time when the legislature writes down and passes something like that, it has to go to the Florida Department of Revenue, and then they're going to decide what the legislature just said was tax exempt. So they decided last year after that, and they limited it a little bit more than I believe, and the legislature believed that they were intending. So they limited it to, I mean, maybe just barbed wire and T-post and wood post. Well, there's a lot more that can go into cattle containment and fencing than those things. So we went back to the legislature this year and were successful again. I'll reiterate, successful again because of building those relationships in Tallahassee with our organization and being able to sit down and have those conversations with our legislative leaders. And we got them to, kind of be a little more broad and encompass a few more things. And right now, staff is putting together a list of things. Like we're going to list every single thing we can think of that can come to mind when you're building a fence to contain cattle. Anything that we can contain cattle with, and we're going to give that list to the Florida Department of Revenue, and then at least they can go down it and check yes or no whether they're going to be that they think it falls in the new rewritten legislation that they just passed if it's tax exempt. And it'll do two things. One, it'll identify 100% what is tax exempt, and the other thing it'll do is it'll identify if there are any of those things that they kicked out that we could go potentially back to the legislature if we believe strongly enough that it should be. We can go back and have them, specifically put those few, hopefully very few items in and go again. But like Dale said on that, it's just a work in progress to see where it ends up to be, so we know exactly what is exempt. But that's kind of out of our hands. We're working with them, but we're waiting on a decision by the Florida Department of Revenue on that.
And ag trailers also fall under that exemption, and just the number that they come up with for the cattle containment, showing that $48 million a year in tax will be saved. And on the trailers is $24 million a year in tax that will be saved. So that's a lot. That's a big deal.
Good. Membership dues, we want to do that?
Yeah, we in 2019 we started the whole process of raising our membership dues. It didn't go into effect till 2020. That was our first dues increase in 19 years, and that was a long time. And we lost some members because of our increase. Part of it was from not really knowing the reasons for our increase. And it was obviously to raise revenue, but a lot of that revenue was to also help us be fully staffed for what we need to be staffed for as an association. And everybody knows that we're still dealing with inflation. And then, as Pat talked about earlier, Miss Benita Whalen was our hire after our dues increase, and we've never had anybody in that position before, but she is the one that gets us an ear and gets us a seat at the table where some places really don't want us there. But she's there. She represents us very good, and she is, for lack of a better word, is a rock star for our association. But the dues increase, like even in our county, in Hardee County, there were some people that wanted to know why, and they were a little bit like, I don't know if I'm gonna pay it. But after you talk to them and educate them and have a conversation with them, well, then they're like, well, that's a no-brainer. The big challenge was getting everybody educated on the reason why. And it seems like once we did that, we started gaining some more traction. Our membership there has been increased. It's still not where it was before we increased the dues, but it's on the rise, and we think we get positive things done that will hopefully surpass where we were before we put the dues increase there.
Yeah, I want to reiterate what Dale said. Also, we had a little minor thing, pandemic kind of deal that happened then. So that kind of hurt our county's abilities to have our county affiliates to have their meetings. And that probably didn't help us in the membership thing. But what Dale said, I can't say enough about Miss Benita Whalen. We just have never had somebody that could speak the language of the water management. We're just cattle ranchers, and they're speaking in technical terms that we have no clue what the heck they're talking about sometimes, or a lot of things. And I'm fine with pleading ignorant on some of that stuff, but you know what? As an association, that's the awesome thing about it. We can hire a professional that's on our side and kind of knows our point of view, and can help guide us through that, and help specific members, guide them through some potential problems that they run into along the way. I know Miss Benita has done that. She has been awesome. Abby Clapp is another hire that we've had since our dues raise, and I want to talk about what I'm going to keep calling the defense tax exemption, even though it encompasses containment of cattle and trailers. But you know, if you take, let's see, $2,150. If you spend $2,150 on materials that would have been taxed, that are now not taxed, then you just saved $150, which is your membership dues to the Florida Cattlemen's Association. So Dale said the number like 48 million for on one thing and 24 on another. That's a lot of dues paying right there that we, I mean, and I am going to toot the horn, not mine, but of this association. I mean, basically, if you're a cattle producer, we have given you a way to pay your dues and not complain 1 second about paying $150 for that. There's way more value in being a member of this association than $150 can buy you. That's for sure. So I think it's important that people understand that. I'd also, I mean, since we're sitting here at a research station, and Dale mentioned the Beef Cattle Enhancement Board and those funds, you know, that I think Dusty told us that he had 60 applications that he knows of that have been sent in to the board. So that's 60 requests for funding for research or promotion that money will go to, and that board will decide that. That's not the Florida Cattlemen's. Now, we're going to continue to advocate for that money and lobby for that money, but we do not decide as Florida Cattlemen's where that money goes. We have nothing to do with that in any way. We are just, it's a good thing, and we are for good things that help our industry. So I think that board is well represented by, I would call them our industry experts. Some of them are producers, and some of them are have other expertise that we utilize in our industry.
One thing that I think I forgot to mention, with the Cattle Enhancement Board money, we have got this year $2 million is what we got, and that's the most we have gotten. But we've got zero before too. So we've been from 2 million to zero. There's been a couple of years there was $1 million. We even got knocked down to 750,000 one year, then zero, and then so we feel like this was really a huge win for our industry.
Absolutely, and I mean, not to say the legislators' names or the politicians' names, but I'm just telling you, back to the pack, building those relationships, constantly working that, having our professional staff in Tallahassee and Kissimmee engaging with those folks, individual members engaging with them, certainly. But, you know, that's how you kind of have those big wins, I think, for the industry. And that's the biggest positive in my mind of being a member of FCA. I'm never going to stop trying to sell that message, no matter who the group is that I'm speaking to, because I think it's important to also recognize, I forgot one little minor detail in my history. My dad worked for the University of Florida, IFAS, for 35 years. He was an extension agent and an extension director in a couple of different counties in the Panhandle. So the clothes that went on my back and the food that went in my stomach was basically from the IFAS budget in an indirect way and through our family's operation. But it's important that we continue to fight for the funding for this research facility and the rest of them scattered around the state. No matter what size operation you are in, I mean, we're constantly utilizing the research and education that we receive from the university and from IFAS. And I mean, some things we don't even know that we do today as normal practice, were developed by the men and women that came before you at IFAS. I mean, we just think it's common practice now, but there was probably a research project and a study that basically said that's what needs to be the normal practice for that. So I mean, I think it's very important that we, as an association, that we support the land grant university and that we support the research they do, and that we maybe bend your ears sometimes when we want you to do some research on something that we think is important. So, I mean, you know, we try and do that every once in a while too, and we appreciate when the university listens and moves forward on those things, because we're certainly willing to go try and help get the funding for that anytime. And I think it's important that to make sure that the university is funded, especially when it comes to research and education on behalf of agriculture. Okay. So another really neat thing that where this is rocking on to the, Dale is going to be the 10th President Elect to kind of, I'm going to say, be the leader of our FCLA, Florida Cattlemen's Leadership Academy. And so they're going to go around the state. Dale's just, I think, selected his class. We have no more than 12 in it. And I got to do it last year, and it's a fun perk of being president-elect to get to go with a bunch of future leaders of our industry. We pick them from straight off the ranch to from research stations, from county agents' offices. I mean, there we take people, you know, from our allied side. I mean, it's a pretty neat thing to get to go around and see the diversity in agriculture, and especially ranching in Florida, and try and understand, you know, the whole circle that we're all in Florida. I mean, ranching in North Florida is a little bit different than down here in Dale's country. So, I mean, it's going to be, it's a unique experience. We also utilize a lot of the facilities that IFAS has, the meats lab at the university, visiting some of the stations sometimes. It's a really great program. And it's not just going to visit places. I mean, there's some leadership components that are in it, and it certainly does two things. It makes them grow and realize outside of their little bubble that they're in Florida, that there is a very diverse ranching industry in our state. And then it does another thing, which it builds camaraderie. They get to interact with people that they possibly wouldn't have in their day-to-day life. I mean, they're going to meet people from another county that they really only run into maybe at a cattleman's quarterly or something, but no real time to really sit down and have conversations and get to know each other and talk about their own operations. And I think everybody that comes out of that with a new idea, something they can take back to their profession, whether it be an extension agent or a researcher or a producer. I think they go back and they implement some things they learned from their classmates, and it certainly has allowed us to grow our leadership. Beaver Yoder is our treasurer right now. He's the first FCLA graduate to become an officer. I think in years to come, you will see that me and Dale wouldn't be allowed in anymore, that you would have to have went through FCLA to get there. You know, so I think it's a really cool thing that like I said, this is a 10th year, and Dale will be going along with that class, and he will be representing basically the officers and leadership of the association with that class.
We start October 5th, and they will graduate at the annual convention in Marco in June. We'll have four, it's basically a quarterly thing. We'll have 4 sessions together. So we have Jim Hanley's going to be aggravated with me because I don't have the exact date of our September quarterly that's coming up, and but we're going to have a September quarterly. We also, before that, we're going to have the FCA heifer sale in Arcadia. I'm guessing, but I think it is the 25th. It's on a Friday, and you know, I think they're going to have some lunch and some stuff like that. So it's going to be a good sale, and you know, we have a committee that oversees that and puts that on. They go out there and try and source the cattle from members. There's some criteria that they try and keep everything in. So there are going to be some exceptional heifers to choose from. I believe they're going to sell
generally in lots of 10 or smaller. So it's kind of a time where a smaller producer can reach out there and get some genetics from some of the larger ranches that they may not have been able to, possess before. And I think it's going to be a good sale, good opportunity to meet and mingle with fellow producers. And in our quarterly, which I do not know the date, 7th and 8th of September in Davenport, we're going to hold, at least this will be my first quarterly as president. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of what I would tell everybody there. So one thing, I think we met as officers last week. All the officers met. We met with some of the staff, and we were just trying to see, like, how can we get better? How do we move forward with this association? We do so many things in a really good way with a small group of staff. So how do we get better? And what can we do? So I think we identified a few things. We're going to try and do a better job of telling our story via social media and any other avenue that we think we can get engaged on. We're going to try and do that. We're going to try and not just tell our story to the general public, but sometimes a lot of this information that me and Dale kind of think, we live in this bubble over here. We're at the quarterlies. We're going to the stuff. Maybe some of those big wins that FCA does and a lot of the things that we're working on, maybe they don't trickle down to all the members like we kind of think they do. So we're going to try and make sure we do a much better job making sure each and every member knows what their association is doing for them, and that they're welcome to come every single quarterly and be a part of creating the policy or moving us forward with whatever ideas they might have. And that's another thing. So I'm going to tell our committees, chairs, that's really what I want them to do. I'm not going to tell you what I want to come out of that committee. I want you to go into your committees, and I'll list some of them. So like animal health, environmental, membership. I'm going to mess up if I research and education, PR, all these committees. So I'm not telling them what I want to come out of, but what I do want is them to go into them every single time thinking, what can we craft? What can we come out of here as a committee that moves the association and the industry forward in a positive way? And bring that, whether it's a resolution or a staff directive, whatever they've got, bring that to the state board of directors and let's talk about it there and let's vote on it. And I feel like when you engage all the members and in that way, that they'll feel a part of it. Because I think sometimes we just kind of gloss over some of these things, and the members look and they go, well, they did that. They did that. Well, who's they? If you're a member, you're they. You're supposed to be able to come and call me and Dale. Our number's at the front of the magazine, so is every staffer. I mean, it's there for a reason. We want you to come and engage with us, and we want your opinion, and we want you to be a part of formulating how we move forward. So there is no that. You're a member, and I'm a member, and Dale's a member. We hold no hierarchy position, in my opinion. We got to try and get through a meeting and come and do stuff like this, but as far as determining the direction and the policy moving forward of the Cattlemen Association, they is the membership. It's not me and Dale or the officers alone. So I'd encourage you to come and be a part of that. Oh, so apparently we've been updated by Mr. Hanley via text. He's watching. Thank you, Mr. Jim, for always keeping track of us. We warned you that me and Dale were on the loose. So the heifer sale is August 25th. September 7th and 8th is our fall quarterly. November 30th through December 1st is the year-end quarterly. And the big event, I call it the big event because we're in Tallahassee engaging with our legislative leaders, is going to be January 16th and 17th in 2024, obviously. So thank you, Mr. Jim, for keeping us straight. I don't know what our time is, but if anybody's got Questions? To ramble or to talk?
Do you have any other important things you definitely want to make sure you get in before we get questions?
I mean, I guess I'll just reiterate what I said. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to the Cattlemen's Association. Mr. Hanley, we say he's the man of many hats. I mean, you know, he tries to keep, oh, I forgot, the foundation, sorry, very important. Foundation is our philanthropic arm, is what we'll call it, of the Florida Cattlemen's Association. And it is a 501c3, and it actually helps facilitate the Florida FCLA, the Leadership Academy. They help fund that, which they have many donors that kind of have, I think, earmarked the money for that program. But, you know, they do their job in a lot of ways is, you know, they're, like I said, the philanthropic arm of the association. It is a board that controls the funds and manages the funds of the foundation. I can't remember exactly. As officers, we sit on it at different times. Right now, I'm not on the board. I think Dale just came off the board, and so you know, there's always one or two members of our officer group that's on the board. But the board chairman right now, just changed, is Mr. Henry Kemper. He's a past president of the Florida Cattlemen's Association. So I mean, they're going to help you know, further our mission of telling our story, engaging with. They do some funding for some educational programs for bringing school kids out to some ranches and stuff like that, trying to help fund that endeavor, because, you know, sometimes maybe the school system doesn't really have the funds to do all those kinds of things. So we kind of try and fill that void. We've through the foundation, I think, I don't know if there's one on this particular research station, but we've donated money for buildings at some of the research stations at the university. Oh, this room here, sorry. So the room we're in is one of those projects. So obviously, I didn't know that, but again, that's kind of the work that the foundation does on behalf of our industry. More updates from Mr. Hanley.
No, that's from Dusty.
Oh, sorry. Now this one's from Dusty Holly for everybody. We do not have a ranch rodeo this year. That used to be how the foundation basically did a lot of their fundraising. So it isn't happening this year. I think that board just kind of thought that, you know, I'm not saying it's run its course, but they're just trying to find any avenue. It took a lot of work to put that on. It was a fun event, but it took a lot of work and effort, and there was not enough qualifying rodeos. So they're looking for any great ideas to raise some money for the foundation, and so they can build more buildings like this one. Dale?
Okay, you have one question.
Oh gosh, who's it from?
Matt Pierce.
Matt, all right, hit us with it. Past President Matt Pierce.
What are your thoughts on conservation easements and protecting working lands through programs like Rural and Family Lands Protections Program?
Okay, so thank you, Matt. Actually, thank you for, I mean, that is a really huge thing, I think, for our industry. The Rural and Family Lands, we didn't throw it on our big wins this year because they didn't get some money because they had money already sitting there, I think is kind of the reason. But so for the conservation easements, we believe that a lot of our producers and our members can utilize that program to, and I think Dale and his family will speak positively of this, that, you know, it really sets them up to be able to plan for the next generation and the next, and kind of protect those lands basically for the future. And it keeps it in the most pristine state that it's probably ever going to be in. So I think it's important that I think conservation is a big thing in Tallahassee. I did go to one event that I want talk about, and this is how important I think conservation is, and why we have to keep it in the forefront of not only our minds, but when we keep it in the forefront of our political leaders' minds, is when you really get the funding to make those things happen. So I went to this event, and it was sponsored by Conservation Florida, and I went, and I was just there to speak as a cattle producer in Florida, you know, and when I was asked, I was like, oh, that's going to be so easy. I can do that. All I got to do is talk about, you know, how I feel about stuff and the importance of our environment and how positive I think ranching is for the environment and those things. But what they failed to tell me was that I was going to be speaking after the Senate President and after the Speaker of the House. So once I realized that, I got a lot more nervous, but it also showed me, after hearing them speak, that they recognize the value in conserving these ranch lands in Florida. And if our leaders of our elected leaders understand that and acknowledge that, you know, then we've got a lot of room to work with to try and further that endeavor in Tallahassee. And it's a voluntary thing, in my opinion. I'm sure there's some ranchers that aren't going to utilize conservation easement, but to not have that funding and not have it in rural and family lands and everything would be devastating, not only in conserving those pristine lands, but it would actually hurt a lot of ranching operations in Florida, because with 1,000 people, they keep saying that, and it hadn't changed. So that makes me even more nervous. Actually, I've heard it at 1,100 people a day moving to Florida each and every day of the year. It's going to become more important than ever that we protect our natural resources and our ranch lands, and that we keep these pristine working grasslands. I mean, you know, they're helping with water quality. I mean, you lose these things, I don't know where we go. So I think it's a great big issue out there that we have to continue to advocate for the funding and advocate for that mission of preserving and protecting ranch lands. Thank you, Matt.
He said thank you. It's a great webinar. Do you guys have any questions before we close the event? Maria, you go first.
Well, before I ask my question, I want to thank you both for being here. We have this very strong relationship with the clientele, but you both coming here, I think it helps some of our students understand that relationship, and we're very appreciative for the support we get from Cattlemen, not only Cattlemen enhancement or funds, but also the relationship. My question is more from the personal standpoint, from your operations. If you have, you both told this story that we're 56th generation. For some of the, especially international students, that might be really difficult to understand. Wow, 6 generations involved in this business, which I think is more than just a business. It's just more than like a passion. Moving forward, what do you think would be the biggest challenge for that story to continue? So for the next generation, what do you think right now would be main challenge, whether it's policies or economics, or in your opinion, what is that main topic? And I understand it might be different.
One of the things that I think as thinking about the next generations or 2 or 3 is that the land value is only going to increase by the people moving here, and the value is only going to go up. As a multi-generational person or family, can't help but think later on down the road, and I think when they start throwing crazy numbers at whatever generation that is, that's going to be the hard part. So us, or my family, like we feel like we're constantly working to where we don't put our next generations in a bind, so to speak. And we've done that through some conservation easements, and just kind of trying to set things up like that. And it's still a challenge. It's still going to be a challenge the further we go and the more people that move here, because the no-brainer is our green space is shrinking, and it's going to continue to. But through our conservation easement programs, whether it be federal or state or whatever, I think that's the biggest tool that we have.
I think luckily, Matt Pierce, asked that question, and I think, that was, what Dale said. That's basically one of the most important things is recognizing, a simple fact that a big landowner or small, it doesn't matter, the value of some properties in Florida is just, going to continue to rise and rise. And if it is an ag land, I think it's for people to, really important for people to recognize, and they might not like me saying it this way, but that they could sell that. They could sell that, and they could go buy double or triple or whatever the land in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, somewhere. And how does that help Florida? Because if it's not a ranch, what is it? Is it a strip mall? Is it a neighborhood? What is it? If they're going to continue, and most of these families in the lands you're talking about, if they're going to continue in the agriculture industry, whether it be ranching or, produce, whatever it may be, they want to do in agriculture. If they sell here in Florida and they're going to move somewhere else to do that, you just not only lost an ag producer, but you also lost that land forever to be any sort of green space, to have any sort of green space on it, basically, in my opinion. And so the conservation easements and the funding, that's what that does. That protects. That's what I hope that the average Floridian understands, that yes, we're putting in money into the state to buy the development rights from those property owners. That's exactly what you're doing, hopefully. And that keeps it that green space, like, I'm speaking to them out there right now. That's what you drive by every day. That's not a strip mall yet. You see a cow. You see, some other crop being grown on it. That's what that is. And if it's sold for development or other things, then it'll never go back, and you'll never regain that green space. So I think that's important for people to recognize, and I think that is really one of our biggest battles. Land, having the ability to grow. Most of the time when you look at an industry or a business model, you're always looking at it in a way that you're going to grow. How are you going to grow? And that's a struggle in the ag world, is how do you grow sometimes? And I think it's important. I think, my family's operation, so I think I'm not boxing Dale in here. I know they've done citrus and cattle and stuff like that, but my family's background doesn't necessarily say cattle. We've always had a little bit of cattle, but we grew, my grandfather grew shade tobacco. Okay, so it was basically the outside wrapper of a cigar. And it was a massive industry in Gadsden County. It was the largest employer back in those days, and that's what almost every farmer in our county was growing. And that industry, I think it's important. It went away. It does not exist in our county anymore. It basically hardly exists in the United States anymore. I think there's a little bit of shade tobacco growing in Connecticut still. So stuff can go away. If you don't think an ag industry can vanish, I can point out a couple of them that they can go away. And when they do, if those property owners are no longer able to financially sustain their family, then they have to sell. And what is that going to? What's going to happen to that land? Is that going to be more environmentally friendly? Is that going to be better for all Floridians or not? I say not myself. I've never seen a farm turn into something better, in my opinion. But so I think it's important that we always are out there telling our story and making sure that the general public and the political leaders understand and know not only where we're coming from, but the ramifications, that the dominoes that will fall if they don't act and they don't have the funding for some of these programs.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Hey, thank y'all for being here. just curious, on the FCLA, what's the criteria or how was the group selected?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So there's a hard, gotta be 21. All right. And after that, I think, I mean, we've slipped it on up in there to the mid 40s, so I think that's kind of just a judgment call. I will say that at least I've been involved in selecting it twice now. Once last year for my class with then President Wes Carlton, and this year part of it for selecting for Dale's. And so really what we try and do is have a good representation of the state. So their location kind of matters. So we don't want a bunch of people in from one spot because we're trying to, move everybody. So location matters. And then I'm not gonna lie, your age. So if you're a 21 or 22 and we've got a bunch of 30-year-olds that are in, we might roll you back to, that's where I always say, for the young ones, don't get your feelings hurt or think that you weren't wanted in the program. It's just we had to get some of the older ones through first, kind of thing. So there's really, basically you can be nominated by your county association. You can be nominated by an individual member or
Alumni.
Or one of the past presidents. So I think I would look at them, in my opinion, which I'm done selecting. So I've made my last selection with Dale's class, but I tried to make sure that, we really took the county's opinion. If a county association recommended somebody, if they put an application forward, I kind of made that kind of like, okay, we really need to pay attention to that because, that's our whole association. We're a grassroots organization. So we kind of, if one of our county affiliates feels strongly about somebody, they'll probably have a priority, but that doesn't mean they're locked in per se. We try and
Some
do the
years,
best juggling job we can.
some years we haven't always had 12.
That's true.
The last 2 years have been.
Last 2 years, we've
Like
had
18 this year.
Yeah.
It's a tough process. Especially when you're talking about the logistics. Don't necessarily know the people up in the panhandle, but so it's a process you go through and try to use your best judgment. But I'd say it was something that was a vision probably 12 years ago. Took it a couple years to come to fruition, and it has been a very valuable program to our association and our industry.
I think we've made a good representation of maybe allied members, maybe sales reps for companies, farm managers, ranch managers. We've had extension agents, multiple extension agents. We try and get, we've had, you got full-time ranchers. We would throw on some part-time ranchers, where it's not their day job and stuff like that. So we try and do the best job we can, making sure that if they, I haven't seen one yet in my 2 years that I didn't want to go on the FCLA. So, but when they say 12, and I think 12 is a good number, I think it does make it where it's a better experience for everybody. We don't have to go get a school bus to go somewhere. We just kind of need a van. So I think I certainly think that many of our committee chairs, like I said, Mr. Yoder is our treasurer right now. He's our first FCLA graduate as an officer, but many of our committee chairs are FCLA graduates. I think it's doing exactly what was envisioned when it was created. It's engaging and growing our future leaders.
Any other questions?
Well, I do want to say thank y'all for having us. Obviously, you can kind of tell me and Dale are not polished politicians for speaking, but we really do feel strongly about our association, and we know it does good work. and we want you to join us if you're not a member.
Thank you. Please join us in September on the 12th for our next Ona Highlight. We have a guest speaker who is in the room with us today, Dr. Cassio Bronner. He is a visiting associate professor from Brazil, and he is here for a year to work with Dr. Moriel. He's going to be presenting nutritional research on Bos indicus cattle. So again, that is September the 12th. Another event that you need to be watching for that's a little ways out is October the 19th. Here at the center, it's going to be building sustainable pastures for healthy livestock from the ground up. I believe this is a South Florida Beef Forage program. And again, it's here at the center, a full day event. The cost to attend is $25. High school and college students are free. And as always, I will share this flyer with you when I share the recording from today's webinar. If you're not already doing so, please follow us on social media. We're on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. And if you don't already do so, we invite you to join our mail list where you will get nice newsy emails once a week on Friday so you can know about all the happenings here at the center and what's going on. So again, thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you in September. And thank you again to our speakers.
Thanks for having us.